Okay, I'm going to make a natural edged bowl from this piece of holly, which if we get down low enough here you can see is quite an asymmetric shape. It has just come from a log which has been split in half. This is more or less the line of the pith here, but I want to make it an oval shape. So if we turn it this way, you can see that the length of the log is greater than its width. So we just need to trim off this piece here to even the log up, and maybe just knock off the corners to make it a little easier once it's mounted in the lathe. So I'll just do that now with the bandsaw, and then we'll come back and see about mounting it up. Well, it's been trued up now on the saw with the corners taken off. I'll now make a 1-inch hole in the centre here on the log side, and that will be for the expanding pin chuck on the Robert Sorby chuck system. I'll use this perspex sheet with circles scratched on it as a centre finder. Just put it over the log and set it so that the circle is evenly distributed on the log, and then put a little nail or something through the pinhole to mark centre, and that's the point that I'll drill from. So there's the hole now drilled into the holly log. This is green holly, it's quite wet, it's only been cut down a couple of months at the most, and for that time it is at the moment winter, and so it hasn't dried out much at all. There's very little checking on this exposed end. In fact, I don't think there's any. So we'll be just roughing it out at this stage now, and then it will be put inside, well, this goes in my attic actually, to dry out for a couple of months, and then we'll return to finishing it. So we'll just set it up now, ready to rough. Okay, so this is the Patrick chuck, and I'm going to take out this long jaw now and put on the pin jaws, and to do that I'll use an electric screwdriver with a hex bit in it. I've had to replace some of these screws. These are stainless steel ones. They're a little bit harder than the ones that come with the chuck. I find that the ones that come with the chuck can round off sometimes, and they can be very difficult to get out once they've rounded off. But these stainless ones are, I bought them on eBay for a couple of quid. Much harder, a deeper socket for the hex nut. You have to grind them down a little bit to make sure that they seat properly, and I had to shorten the length of them, but it was easy enough to do on a grindstone, and cheaper than the standard replacements, because I must have got 30 or 40 screws for my couple of quid. I find it best when using this to set the slipping clutch to about halfway, because then it doesn't snatch the chuck round when the screw actually bites up. Of course, with this chuck, whoops, it doesn't matter which sequence they go on. That's one of the nice things about the Patrick chuck. You can put them on in any order, most of them anyway. The one I just took off, the long jaw, has got a sequence on it, because when you put them on in sequence, the grips inside actually form a thread which pull the wood into the chuck. So it doesn't matter if you put it on out of sequence, but if you want that effect, then you need to have them on in the correct sequence. Looks like I've missed one somewhere. So, there's the pin chuck in place. There's a small disadvantage I find with this particular chuck, and I have written to Sawbys about it, in that, if I bring the camera round, you can see that it angles in slightly from front to back. If you tighten the chuck right up, it will actually compress that out of it. But the problem is when it expands inside the hole, there is a tendency for these to bend slightly, and of course that then forms a conical shape, which is not really ideal for holding on to the log, especially if you've got it free turning, which I don't recommend because it will almost certainly fly off. And Sawbys did say they were looking into strengthening this. I don't know how soon they'll do that, but definitely these aren't really quite strong enough for the job they're intended anyway, because if you're going to use a pin chuck, it's almost inevitably going to be with a fairly heavy log. So let's just set this a little bit lower. I think that's right. Now with these, I just put it on gently at first, because it very rarely sits square owing to the shape of the log itself. And then we'll just bring the tailstock up, adjust your log so that it looks more or less square to the rotation and more or less central. It doesn't have to be bang on, somewhere near, and then lock it up. Now you can tighten that pin chuck. Of course, with the tailstock in place, there is no danger of it coming off. At least as long as you've got sufficient of the chuck inside it. Sometimes you'll have logs where only a small part of the chuck goes in. You have to be very, very careful with that kind of setup, because that can be quite dangerous. I've had a couple fly off like that. And it's not nice when a £1.5 of wood goes flying around a workshop. Right, I've got this set on the wrong speed at the moment, so I'll just set it to the lower speed. Turns free, turns backwards, and just bring it up. Obviously shaking the camera now. Right, I'll have to mount the camera on a tripod. So there we are, it's mounted in, ready to start cutting. Okay, so I'm going to be using a 1/2 inch bowl gouge with a sort of a long grind pattern on it for the roughing. away with about 800 there. Now I'm going to put my face shield on. Now, when you're turning an oval bowl, the amount of width that you've got will ultimately be determined by a couple of things. The amount that the shallow side drops down, because the circle, once you start to cut the bowl shape itself, will be less here. If this is very high up, obviously you're not going to get a lot of difference. It's going to be a more circular bowl. If this goes down further, then you get a reduction in the diameter at that point, and so you have a longer, a more oval shaped natural edge bowl, and that's really what I want to achieve here, is this oval shape. So you just cut, you don't round the whole thing out, you cut it out until it reaches a point, and then you can start to shape it, because otherwise you're going to be taking your width off in an effort to achieve a round at this depth. So I'll start shaping in now so that I don't lose the width while I'm making the cut. I'm not worried at this point about making a tenon or anything. I just want the basic shape first, and then I'll form the tenon afterwards. But you can see now we've nearly lost that flat, and yet we haven't lost any more off this width in an effort to do it round in one, and that's because of the curve of the bowl, and that enables us to retain the oval shape then. Of course, with being oval as well, it will probably be a bit shallow. I'll probably come in here now about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch to make a good sized tenon and enough room to part off as well when it's completed. I'll cut into the tenon now. I'll be using these deep grip jaws for the tenon. It doesn't actually need something as strong as that for this particular bowl, but I quite like those. And I've got my little chart here. This gives you all the internal and external dimensions of the Patriot wood turning chuck system. And I've marked for that one 54mm is the ideal. That's where you can get more or less a perfect circle and a proper grip all the way around. So I set the vernier up to 54. And we're about 10mm off that at the moment. Roughly get it in place with a big gouge. Here at the centre. Whisker there. If you're going to grip with the deep section of these jaws, it can actually be parallel. You don't need to have a dovetail on it. Complete the shaping. Nearly there. That's roughly what I'm looking for. I want to have a decorative foot on it as well. I don't want to leave it just to go down for a bone. I want to put quite a nice foot on it ultimately when it's dried out, so I'm going to leave room for that. I find the best way to judge your shape when you're turning a bowl as well, and many turners will tell you this, is to rather than looking at the point that the gouge is removing the material, to look across the top of your workpiece and see the profile, because it's much easier to see small bumps and little changes in that you want to take out. You've got a much better idea of having a regular curve by looking across the top here than by looking at the point that the tool is actually interacting with the wood. Well, that's not far off. It's by no means the right shape, but because it is so wet, and I'm only going to rough it down to about 3/4 inch, and it will move a considerable amount, there's no point being too particular with it at this stage. I just want to get it into an approximation of the finished shape, and then put it to one side to dry. So we'll take it off now. I've finished the outside. It's ready to be reversed. Ouch. And I just changed these jaws for these. You've seen that done once, so I'll turn the camera off for a minute. These deep grip jaws are actually, these aren't Patrick, these are Nova chuck. They fit this, and these are numbered, but again it's more with a view to having these rings inside will form what is effectively a thread if you have them in the right sequence. And if you're turning something like a hollow form, that will tend to pull the piece into the chuck more and give it a very, very rigid grip indeed, a good firm grip. To make that easier, when it comes to taking this on and off, I actually hang them up in sequence so that they come off naturally in the right order. I don't have to keep looking to see which is which. There is a small disadvantage actually to these stainless steel screws as well over the original steel ones, in that the steel ones are magnetic, whereas the stainless ones aren't, probably because of a high nickel content, I should think. There we are. The bark on this has been damaged and come free, so sometimes it's nice to see the bark left on, but if it starts to come away, well, I'll just have to play it by ear and see what happens after it's dried. But anyway, now I'm just going to make a basic hollow out of the piece to a thickness of about 18-20 millimeters, something like that, roughly following the shape, and then it'll be set aside to dry. I'm going to have to take the tailstock off. Normally I'd slide the headstock up to the end and work off the end of the bed to do this, but I haven't got room to stand the tripod up if I do that. Holly's funny stuff actually, because when you cut it, it's got this lovely soft ivory white colour, but after a little while, when it's been cut, it goes green, really grey-green colour. It doesn't retain that colour though, but it's odd like that. Lots of woods do that, of course, change colour during a cut. Ash in particular goes pink, and alder goes a bright orange colour. It's a shame that some of these fresh cut colours don't stay with woods, because some of them are actually really fantastic. Fresh cut cherry, flowering cherry, beautiful colours inside, pinks and greens. Not too sure how much I want us to take that in, but not much, nearly there. Okay, it's a bit flat bottomed, but I'm not too worried about shape at this stage. The shaping takes place when the bowl has reached a suitable dryness. So that's it, that's roughed out now. And it'll be ready to dry out. It's quite remarkable, the colours that you get. Let me just get the light on that. I don't know if it looks any better with light. You can see how green it's changing here already. And that was the same colour as this earlier. But a nice wood to work with. Very distinctive smell. Here we are, roughed out, and we'll do the finishing video when it's dry and ready.